Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this Green Party Roundtable on Guaranteed Basic Livable Income. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci pour nous rejoindre ce matin pour cette table ronde des Verts sur la garantie de base de l'income vivable. Today's roundtable will be moderated by Green Party Leader Annamie Paul. La discussion d'aujourd'hui sera modérée par la chef du Parti Vert, Annamie Paul. Today's panel will include Elizabeth May and Paul Manley, Green MPs, and they will be joined by Floyd Marinescu and Sheila Regehr. Madame Paul est rejointe ce matin par les députés verts Elizabeth May et Paul Manley, et puis aussi Floyd Marinescu et Sheila Regehr. Now, Annamie Paul. Maintenant, Annamie Paul.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Bonjour à tout le monde. Thank you for joining us this morning for this roundtable on a guaranteed livable income. We're really happy to have you with us, and we're so happy to have such an expert panel with us, not only our two Green MPs who are long-time supporters, of course, of a guaranteed livable income, but also Sheila and Floyd as well, who are our experts and advocates. I'm coming to you from the traditional territories of the Mississauga, of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. Alors aujourd'hui, notre panel va être en anglais, mais comme toujours, nous allons essayer d'organiser une table ronde aussi en français, parce qu'un revenu minimum garanti, c'est quelque chose qui préoccupe beaucoup de personnes, qui est un enjeu partout. Alors, nous allons avoir une autre table ronde en français aussi. So today we'll be speaking in English, but of course we will, as always, work to organize a similar session in French as well, because this is an issue that is of interest from coast to coast to coast. So today I'm going to give as much time as possible to our expert panel to discuss guaranteed livable income and why the time has come for it. We felt particularly moved to talk about this in light of the recent report by the BC Basic Income Panel that, in our opinion, very wrongly came to the conclusion that BC should not adopt a basic income and should not even proceed with a basic income trial program. We think that this was the wrong conclusion. We're going to tell you some of the reasons why. Let me just say offer a couple of opening thoughts. First, to say that it is not an overstatement at all to say that the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, when it came in, saved lives, and that without it, millions of Canadians would have been in a very desperate situation very, very quickly. And that the very fact that we had to introduce that in and of itself tells you something about the need, the gap that exists, and the number of people that when there are any changes in their lives, any significant changes in their lives, they are left in a very desperate situation. And it tells you about the number of people, even when they are working, are left in a desperate situation. So the question has to be, what will replace the Canada Recovery Benefit, the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit, the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit, all of these benefits that again had to be put in place after the CERB was wound down in order to make sure that millions of Canadians were not thrown into a desperate situation. Because the fact of the matter is that we are in the midst of a major structural transition in terms of work. Even before the pandemic struck, we were in need of a national conversation on the changing nature of work. We saw that work had been changed by artificial intelligence and automation, something that has only accelerated during the pandemic. And so this was already a critical conversation, and it's now one that has become urgent. And this is the time to discuss how we will confront this change, what role guaranteed livable income can play in addressing persistent inequalities. And so we, as the Green Party, will continue to make the case for a guaranteed livable income. There is no adequate substitute for it. It is something whose time has come, and we see the cross-party and cross-partisan support building for that. I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, who has worked over the last couple of, well, quite a long time, of course, on the issue of a universal basic income, but also in the last couple of weeks has been leading some of the response to the BC Basic Income Panel's report and recommendations. And so Floyd Marinescu is the Executive Director of UBI Works and the CEO and co-founder of C4 Media. He is a longtime advocate for a universal basic income, and together with Paul Vallee, organized more than 120 Canadian CEOs to endorse a basic income in October of 2018. Floyd?
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here with these panelists. I come to you, as Annamie mentioned, as a businessman who's devoted a lot of time and resources to promoting basic income because we see it as essential for our modern economy. First, let's talk about what the report says besides the headlines. We know from the report and some private discussions that have happened with the panelists that they don't preclude the benefits or possibilities. Nothing in the report precludes the ability, the benefits of a national basic income program. What the report says is that on a provincial basis, the tools are more difficult to access to pay for a basic income, and as well as even referring to the difficulty on taxpayers who might feel it unfair given the lack of resources that the province has to pay for a basic income. But nothing in there says that a national basic income would not be a good idea, in fact, or basic income itself. In fact, the report is concluding that we need targeted basic incomes, turning our disability support services into something like a basic income, making existing social assistance systems more basic income-like, and choosing a few groups in the most dire need to receive something like a basic income. They're simply saying that on a provincial level, a province-wide basic income for everyone, in their opinion, is not viable. The second thing to get about the report is the context, the question that they were posed about the best way to relieve poverty in a provincial setting. This is really important, that we have to see basic income not only as an anti-poverty solution. In fact, the report itself says that long-term income security and the benefits that could create are ascribed to basic income, and that may not be, but they don't look into providing those benefits of long-term income security in their more targeted solutions. So we know that basic income would provide an opportunity for new entrepreneurs to create more innovation, an opportunity to provide an income supplement to the bottom half of the country, which is suffering the most in this period of great economic transition, where in fact we have huge problems with underemployment, we have huge problems with wages not keeping up with cost of living, and technological job disruption is a major factor in that. So we see the economic benefits of a basic income outweighing the costs. A recent report from the Canadian Centre of Economics Analysis concludes that the basic income could create 600,000 jobs across the country, add $80 billion a year to our GDP. That's as much as our pre-COVID tourism and hospitality industries combined. We know that long-term income security will help students stay in school longer, help people pursue higher vocations in life. Actually, we've seen anecdotes in Ontario that people were able to pursue higher income work because they could take the risk of leaving the job market long enough to find that better work. And with the disruptions coming happening right now, our warehouses are being emptied of people, being replaced by robots. Our banking system is using artificial intelligence, letting go of a lot of labor. We've seen this crisis is doing what every crisis before it has done, which is businesses trying to survive, reaching out for the technologies around them at the time to become more efficient. And that's why we're already seeing in the numbers that if you're a low-income worker, the economy has not recovered. If you're a higher income worker, it's already recovered. Well, we think that the economy may never recover for the bottom half of Canadians, just like it hasn't recovered since 2008, where cost of living is increasing and incomes are actually falling in their purchasing power. So basic income is key to turning that around, to making us all beneficiaries of these trends in technology, these trends in increasing asset prices, so that we can all prosper in this new economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Floyd. And we're hopefully we'll have some time at the end just to come back to some of those things. I have a lot of questions there myself coming out of your comments. I'm going to pass it now to Sheila Regehr. Sheila Regehr is the chair of the Basic Income Canada Network. She's a founding member of BCIN, and she's also the former executive director of the National Council of Welfare. Sheila, over to you.
Thanks very much, Annamie. Not knowing what Floyd was going to say, it's interesting. I think he and I have come to similar conclusions about the value of the report. I'm not sure it's entirely what the authors of the report intended. I see some things in there that are really problematic. And from the perspective of the Basic Income Canada Network in particular, because we actually did consult with them. I mean, we had meetings with them, we provided a rigorous modeling report that we had done to them that they seemed to be interested in. We talked to them. My colleague in British Columbia, Dr. Jenna Van Drainen, is an expert in addictions and mental health concerns, as well as basic income. So we talked to them about the basic income movement, about what the basic income movement stands for, what it looks like in Canada, what people want, the experiences that people in the Ontario pilot went through, like the real human dimension of this, as well as the economics of modeling and how you fund this sort of thing. So it was a bit of a surprise to us that there was almost nothing in the report about any of that. There's a huge literature and experience on basic income. I mean, going back, for a very long time, but going back precisely to Martin Luther King Jr. and the kinds of reasons that he was advocating for a basic income are all still the problems we're facing now in society. As Floyd talked about automation, but racism, about gender inequality, about, workers' rights, all of those things. So there didn't seem to be any understanding in the report of that. They quote an Indigenous leader at the beginning, for example, but fail to recognize that there was an inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls that called for a basic income. It seems like that was dismissed. All those studies, all of those calls, they're not there. So anybody not understanding all of the positives of basic income that Floyd talked about, reading this report, I think, would give them some really strange misconceptions. One of the things that really did concern me is they mentioned that they sort of had to abandon basic income principles and they came up with a different sort of framework, but they didn't explain what was a problem with those principles. My feeling in reading the report is that it was probably the unconditionality of a basic income. So Floyd talked about, the value of perhaps starting with a few groups. For me, I really worry about that. They seem to pick groups that they had sympathy for. What does that do to the rest of us? It means if you have targeted programs, there are conditions that exclude people. Basic income is not supposed to exclude people. That's not its goal. By targeting some, you're denying autonomy and dignity to others. It also talks about basic income being kind of one size fits all, which I find ridiculous. The point of a basic income is exactly the opposite. You can use money for anything and you decide. But the takeaways from the report that I see are very similar to what Floyd sees. We need national policy. Our organization and Floyd's, we've always advocated for national policy, the same kind of thing that Prince Edward Island is requesting. This was an opportunity for British Columbia to jump on that bandwagon, to say, this is important, we need help, and to join together and lobby the federal government. I hope lots of provinces do that. It's hard for a province to go it alone. It's really hard for provinces and municipalities in this pandemic environment to respond adequately with the resources they've got. So the pressure is going to get worse. Second point, just very basically, the federal government's better at income security. Social assistance has had its day. It's had its chance to prove its case. It's failed. Like, let's get over that. And then the last point that I would make is that, again, by identifying groups that they seem to sympathize with, I get the feeling that the authors don't trust people. And basic income is about trust. People have to trust government, governments have to trust the people. So I want to finish with a quote from someone who's not quite so fortunate as these people who designed the report. And it came out of an earlier federal consultation around tackling poverty. So this is a quote from one of those participants. Most people want to empower themselves, but they have been excluded from these opportunities. They want a chance to show what they can offer the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sheila. And I'm hoping we have a little bit of time to circle back around to some of the things that you said. And this, I think, is going to be just the beginning of a number of conversations about this, because this really is something whose time has come, and it's important for us to have forums like this to explain why its time has come. I'm going to now turn to Elizabeth May. Elizabeth May is our parliamentary leader and our MP for Saanich Gulf Islands. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Annamie, and I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territory of Wasanich people, Haishkasiam. And it's a great honor. I really want to thank Floyd and Sheila for being here with us, and thank you to Annamie for organizing it. One of the reasons I was attracted to the Green Party when I first joined, believe it or not, back in 2006, was when I discovered that guaranteed livable income was part of the party's policies. And I'd been, and Sheila mentioned Martin Luther King Jr. I wanted to read this quote from a book he wrote in 1967, where he said, quote, "I am now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income." And here we are, you know, many decades later. It's more widely discussed now than it was then. And we are, as a party, proposing it and have for years, but we've actually made some tangible progress. Now, this report which is very disappointing, but it was a direct outcome of the way in which the Green Caucus back in 2017 negotiated a confidence and supply agreement with the British Columbia New Democrats. It was Greens who said, we want to do a pilot project. We want guaranteed livable income to have a pilot here in BC. In Ontario, credit to Kathleen Wynne, she had started a guaranteed livable income pilot in Ontario, as everyone knows, canceled by Doug Ford. Green leader Mike Schreiner tried to keep it afloat and get the federal government to pick up the piece that Ford had canceled. That didn't go anywhere, but really right now, as Sheila mentioned, the leadership is from Prince Edward Island, and I acknowledge that in our background here, not as a participant, but as an attendee, I'm thrilled to see Hannah Bell, who is the member of the Legislative Assembly for the Green Party and critic for social and housing development. Of course, the Greens and PEI are the official opposition and have pushed this issue successfully to the place where the Prince Edward Island government is now saying, look, give us the funds so we can do this project. Within the federal parliament, there is so much, this is what I mostly wanted to stress, so much nonpartisan cross-party support. There is a caucus of MPs and senators called the Anti-Poverty Caucus. We have had so many witnesses. And when you talk about the rich literature, Sheila, so much has come before us. And of course, former Senator Hugh Segal, very much in a leadership role nationally as a former senator, but as a progressive conservative, saying, look, you can't, there's just, this is the solution we need. And you have to take that first step. And I'll just say that when we had a poverty workshop, full day discussion, how many years ago in the Green Party, probably around 2007, and brought in the researchers who'd done the MinCom project way back when. And they said it had been so long, no one had asked them to speak about it for a long time. But it came down to this. They said, we know it will work. We know it will save money in the long term, save the economy money. We know it's what's needed to lift people out to end poverty. But some government has to take a leap of faith and do it, because any trial is going to be limited by the reality that the good data you get is from people who knew they were not going to get it forever. They know it's a trial program and they're in a trial, but it does give us good data. And it absolutely is the case that in this pandemic, I'll just close with one outrageous reality, that that a homeless shelter in Ottawa had an outbreak of COVID, brought into the homeless shelter by two people who had jobs. They were working. They were working in long-term care homes, but they didn't make enough to have a roof over their head. And if that isn't unacceptable to everyone across Canada, and if that isn't the argument that we must stop this now, everyone needs enough income to ensure that they have not fallen into that kind of depth of poverty, that even with a job, they can't have a roof over their head. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And finally to you, Paul. Paul is our MP for Nanaimo Ladysmith, and as well a longtime advocate for a guaranteed livable income. Paul?
Thank you very much, Annamie. I'm speaking today from the traditional territory of this Nanaimo First Nation and the Hulkaminam speaking people. This is something, since I was elected in 2019, I've been bringing up guaranteed livable income, and it's one of my critic areas. And it seemed like Elizabeth and I were the lone voices on this for quite a while, until the pandemic happened. And right away, we were calling for a guaranteed livable income on an emergency basis, and talking about the idea that, you know, give everybody access to this. Those that don't need it don't need to take it. Those that only need portion of it could be taxed back on it. And you know, we didn't do that. We ended up with the CERB, which was a piecemeal program. Lots of people have fallen through the cracks on it. I have so many constituents who didn't meet the criteria for one reason or another. You know, they were on maternity leave from self-employment. They were taking time off for medical leave and were coming back into the workforce. They had taken time off to take care of a loved one. And so there was lots of people that fell through the cracks and didn't, you know, meet the eligibility for the CERB. One of the things that comes back, I've asked the minister in question period and brought this up in debate, and the minister has said, well, you know, we can't afford to write everybody a check. And in this study, I understand that one of the panelists had been talking to the media and said that this program would cost $52 billion. And this is the idea that everybody gets a check and there's no, you know, tax back system on it. There's no incremental system of how people would, who don't need it, would end up paying back part of it. And it's a very simple kind of thing to do. When you get a job, you fill out two forms, one for provincial tax and one for federal tax, and it lists, you know, how many dependents you have and whether you're eligible for disability or any of these other kind of things, and it determines how much tax you're going to pay on every check based on your income. And you could do the same thing with a guaranteed livable income, so it is incrementally taxed back. You set it up so that when you have a basic income, the first, you know, $200, $300, $400 that you earn in a month has a very small increment, you know, 15 or 20%, and that increment grows until you're in the range of $60,000 and you're not needing it anymore. And we have a whole series of different types of tax credits. You know, we have the Canada Workers Benefit for low-income workers, the child tax benefit, and these are all GLI type programs that people have to tie into. One of the very interesting studies that I read too shows that this is like trickle up economics, and Sheila and Floyd touched on this. Trickle down, we know, doesn't work. You give the billionaires money, they just sock it away, and they pad their bank accounts and invest in more stuff. They're supposed to be lifting everybody else up, but trickle up economics is when you make sure that everybody has enough money to meet their basic needs, and then they're spending money in the economy, and it builds the economy. And with the study I read said that within 18 years, the GDP growth from something like this, leveling the playing field for everybody, would pay for the program itself. Also, the social determinants are health. Poverty is a major social determinant of health. Poverty is a major social determinant of people's interaction with the criminal justice system. And so these are other places that will save money. I was reading about a study where a homeless person in Surrey cost the system $180,000 a year because of all the different interactions, court, police, paramedics, everything else. So we can't afford poverty. We need to deal with this in a proactive way, and guaranteed livable income is the way to do that. So I'll pass it back for the panel.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you so much to all of you. I'm going to just, I think we have time maybe just to throw out a couple of questions to you. I really want us to just face some of the let's say the conclusions of the panel head on, and some of the things that we all know are the responses, the negative responses to the idea of a guaranteed livable income. So first, this idea is the idea, the first reason that was given for rejecting a basic income for BC is that people are too diverse in order to be served by a one-size-fits-all check. Does anyone? It seems to imply that the idea would be everyone receives this check and then all other services are somehow eliminated. I see Sheila shaking her head vigorously. Sheila, do you want to tell us why you are?
I just don't understand that at all, actually. It's the fact that people are so diverse, that people's situations are so diverse that you actually need something like a basic income. You need to prevent some setback from becoming an actual crisis. And life is a crisis for lots of people. But like if you've got money, you can manage it. Your mistakes don't matter very much. But all of us at some point or another make mistakes. We face hardships. There are going to be times in our lives where we are going to need a little bit more help. They also seem to imply that there's this group of people that needs help and this other group of people out there that are the ones who are going to have to be the taxpayers to support it. Well, I've been both. I've been every part of this system. I have had to draw on social assistance in the past as a young single parent. I have paid more in taxes now that, supports lots of other people every year. So this idea that there were different groups of people and some are deserving and some aren't, the diversity issue, all you have to do is talk to a small handful of people from the Ontario pilot and you'll find out how different every single person's situation was. And how they spent their money differently. Mm-hmm. But with lots of commonalities, as Paul was referring to earlier, they'll buy healthier food, they'll find better accommodation, they will be healthier, they will contribute back to the economy.
Thank you. And Floyd, very well said. Floyd, let's just answer this basic question. Have we ever succeeded in creating any sort of mix of programs or benefits that covers every single person? I mean, this is a leading question, but I feel like it's important to say yes or no about that. I mean, have we succeeded even with the benefits that we have now, the emergency benefits that have been rolled out during the pandemic? Have we succeeded in that, or are there still people that are falling through the cracks, and why is that?
Well, I would say our universal healthcare system is an example where we have succeeded in a program that helps people with their wide variety of needs. So it is funny that a panel in Canada would conclude that a basic income that serves everyone is not as good as things that serve specific people. You can imagine 50 years ago having made that point against universal healthcare. But we know that a program that covers everyone is simple and gives people long-term security, and the psychological safety that would create was the right way to go. And we need that for Canada. We need it now urgently. And I would add one more thing. Again, the issue is what problem are they being asked to solve? And basic income is about more than anti-poverty. It's about enhancing the economy's ability to grow, more labor market productivity. People find themselves in the right work that suits them, compensating for uncompensated work. That's what a program that serves everyone could achieve, that a program that serves certain people could not.
And I just say again, I want to underscore a point Sheila made. It's astonishing that a report written in British Columbia could ignore the report of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and their recommendation for guaranteed livable income. I mean, this is if you're going to talk about specific groups, which is the wrong way to frame the discussion, we should look economy wide. What would it mean for our economy? And also, even before pandemic, we have another big change that's coming at us. And this is one of the best ways to be resilient as an economy, that change being artificial intelligence. And we know that it's going to have a big impact on the world of work. And that if we have a guaranteed livable income in place ahead of time, just as if we'd had one before COVID hit, we would much better able to deal with the dislocation and the anxieties of a workforce that's losing their work to artificial intelligence and automation.
I just need to point out a very inconvenient truth, perhaps, that the report did say. They mentioned reciprocity, that effectively alluding to the fact that taxpayers paying in more may not feel it fair if they don't see the money going towards specific groups who need it most. And that's an inconvenient truth that we have to face. Voters are taxpayers. That's why it's important. I'm very heartened that the Green Party is talking about advances in artificial intelligence and automation, because basic income solves the middle class's problem as much as it solves problems for people who are in poverty. So we must talk about it from that point of view. The economy is failing the bottom half of the country. This is not just about people on social assistance.
Yeah, we're also looking at the intersection. Sorry.
No, I know I promise you we are going to have another bigger version of this. And I should mention that Hugh Siegel did want to be with us today. This was the one day this week that he couldn't be, but we will be having yet another session about this. Maybe one last thing that we can put out there, because we're going to end the Facebook Live so that we can take some media questions. But again, let's debunk some of the myths. Basic guaranteed livable income, universal basic income disincentivizes work. I'm going to, who would like, I know you're all probably chomping at the bit for that one. Paul, maybe I'll give you that. And this will be our last question, and then we're going to take some media questions. Paul.
Well, yeah, I think that you have to set up a system so that when people start to earn a little bit of money, it's not clawed back the same way that the CERB was. You know, when the CERB hit $1,000, you lost your $2,000 benefit. And you don't set up a program like that. You set it up so there's an incremental tax back on the system. Just to go back to the automation, the billionaire class and the corporations are the ones that are going to profit from automation and artificial intelligence. And they're the ones that should be chipping in to pay for this kind of a program.
Okay, so we will leave it there. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And Sheila, you and I have that in common, that we have both benefited from social assistance systems. In my case, it was in the United States, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, the point is that the experience is stigmatizing, confusing, and incredibly inefficient. And so for anyone who has had that experience, you know why I know that we would have done a better job spending the money on our needs at that time had we had that freedom. So, you know, just to maybe summarize a bit of what you've all said, the things that we all agree on, the piecemeal system is not working. People will continue to fall between the gaps. We have these trains steaming down the line at us, whether it's artificial intelligence or automation or other structural changes that need a solution that is different from the mix of programs that we have now. There's much more to say. We are definitely going to pick this up again. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much to those who joined us. And we're going to log off of Facebook now. Sheila, Floyd, Elizabeth, Paul, if you can just hang on. Thank you so much, everyone. And we will let you know about our next session. Please send us your comments, your questions. This is an ongoing discussion. The momentum is building, and we want you to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. We'll now go to questions from the media. So it'll be one question, one follow-up. Nous allons commencer avec les questions du média. Une question, un suivi. Please use the raise hand feature if you wish to ask a question. Veuillez utiliser la fonction de lever la main si vous voulez poser une question. And please identify yourself and your organization. Veuillez vous identifier ainsi que votre organisation. Alors, so we will start with James Murray. Go ahead, Mr. Murray.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I've heard a number of the speakers refer to the importance of the basic income based on the MMIWG, Murdered and Missing Women and Girls report. What specifically in the report points to this?
I'll jump in if I can, James. Yeah, it's one of the recommendations and calls for action is that it's a very specific recommendation that guaranteed livable income would have prevented and would prevent the ongoing loss of Indigenous women and girls. The vulnerability is an economic vulnerability, and as we've talked about in a previous context, this country has a collapse of its ground transportation and bus system. If you're not wealthy enough to own a car in much of remote and rural Canada, and you can't drive your car to the next city over, there is no public transit opportunity. So if you don't have enough income to own a car, in other words, if you're poor, you are vulnerable. And that was a key recommendation.
Thank you. One of the issues here in Ontario, where Thunder Bay was one of the key cities in the Ontario government's basic income, the people who were getting the basic income have had a couple of meetings. They've talked about how they were making significant lifestyle changes, which proved for the most part that the idea that people were going to sit at home and wallow in the money isn't true. What is it going to take for government and everyone else in this process to understand that we need a basic income to solve basic problems?
Great. That is a great question. And as we said, maybe before I pass the question along, there is tremendous momentum building around the idea of we call it a guaranteed livable income because we really believe it should be, it's not subsistence living we're talking about. We're talking about enough income to be able to make decisions, pivot in life, deal with life as it comes up. But we know that the Liberal caucus, for instance, this is their number one policy priority that they want to discuss at their next policy convention. We know that 50 senators signed a joint letter calling for a universal basic income. This is something that is reaching, and of course we know the NDP also, they have a motion as well. We're longstanding supporters. So this just in the amount of time that the Green Party has been pushing for a guaranteed livable income, we have seen, as Paul said, we were just howling in the dark alone. And now this is really has moved into the mainstream. So we just have to keep doing the work like this. And when reports like that of the panel come out with some false assumptions and let's say regrettable conclusions, we just have to be here like this to respond to it and to debunk the misconceptions that they might produce. Does anyone else want to add to that? Sheila or Floyd? Are you good? Okay. Rosie, next question.
Yes, thank you, James. Okay, next question is David Aiken. Go ahead, David. One question, one follow-up, please.
Oh, hi, everybody. Thanks very much. Question for Annamie. In 2019, any number of polls showed that climate change and accountability was the number one, number two, number three issue. It was a really high priority for a lot of voters. Great opportunity then in 2019 for a party associated so closely with climate change and accountability. This is going to be a different election if we have a general election this spring. Any number of polls recently showed that climate change and accountability has fallen off the table. Number one issues are viruses, vaccines, health. Can I pay my bills? And I wonder if you could just talk about how announcements like this, and the last couple we saw last week on the CERB, on the CRA, might be part of your strategy, Annamie, to make sure that your party, the Greens, are much more associated in voters' minds with the top issues that voters have right now, which is paying the bills. And I just leave the observation that the NDP in voters' minds is more associated with some of those issues right now than the Green Party. Do you want to maybe take a stab at that?
Sure. Well, thanks, David. We welcome the participation of any of the parties in a discussion on how we get to a guaranteed livable income. And that's exactly for all the reasons we just said. This is something that was needed, is now desperately needed, and is almost certainly going to have to be part of our post-pandemic recovery and part of our solution to the structural changes that that pandemic has wrought and were being wrought in any case. And you heard some about that. There's no question we are a smaller party. And so even though we have been talking about guaranteed livable income for many, many years, as Paul said, all alone, as a 2019 candidate running, and Elizabeth ran and Paul as well, we did not get any support for these ideas from any of the other parties, including the NDP. So, you know, we know that we're just going to have to continue to remind people that we were there, that these ideas originated with us. But at the same time, as I said, we welcome the support. In terms of your larger question, we are a party that always talks about the things that matter to people and the things that are going to help us create a more just and equitable society. We did that in the last election as we talked about climate justice, because there is no climate justice without social justice as well. And so during this pandemic, our focus has been, while never forgetting the climate, of course, has been on ensuring that people don't fall through the cracks. There are still so many people that don't have any kind of support, any kind of relief. There are people, whether we're talking about long-term care or we're talking about this people who are being asked, the clawbacks, let's say with the CERB, there are still a lot of people that, that need protection. And so we've been talking about these things because these things matter to people, and that's what we're here for. I'm really pleased to see so many of our policies that we have been championing, again, many times on our own for a long time: universal pharmacare, universal dental care, guaranteed livable income, universal post-secondary education, decriminalization of drugs and a safe supply. I'm very happy to see that the work has not been in vain and that those themes get picked up. But these are longstanding commitments for us. So you will definitely hear us talk about completing our social safety net in the next election, but you will always hear us talk about the climate emergency and the opportunity for a green recovery. Those two things go hand in hand. So that's not a strategy. That's just you know, Greens being committed members of their community and wanting to do what is necessary to make sure that Canada is a truly just, equitable society and sustainable society.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add to that?
Go ahead, Paul.
We've always put people and the planet ahead of corporate profits, and we believe in protecting people, and we believe in protecting the planet that we live on. And climate change is not going away. And a guaranteed livable income is something that's going to help us deal with climate disruption. As people lose jobs, as people have to leave areas because of floods and forest fires, we get people who have to pack up and move all the time because of climate disruption. And their lives are disrupted and their income is gone. And a guaranteed livable income is going to help people deal with the crisis that we face with climate change. We need these programs in place.
Thank you, Paul. David, do you have a follow-up at all?
Yes, I do. Actually, just on an unrelated issue from today's announcement, Annamie, I just wonder if you could address this. Just this issue that recently some notable current and former Green Party members, including former interim leader Joanne Roberts, raised concerns about the way Pratik Aswathi left the organization. Some say until Pratik's situation is resolved, this could be a distraction as the party prepares for an election. And I know that whole Pratik thing was his tenure was what predates your tenure as leader. But I wonder if you just maybe address the issue and the suggestion that that's a distraction and may hinder the party's preparation for an election.
Well, thanks, David. I can't, as you said, it predates me, so I don't have anything that I can say about a situation that predated me. But what I can say in terms of the second part of your question is that we are all I can't say all engines, well, all electric engines running now, getting prepared for the next election. There is no slowdown. There is absolutely no suspension of that. And I'm hoping that you saw that we launched on Friday our Time to Run campaign. This is our campaign to seek the most diverse, progressive group of candidates to run with us in the next election. As someone who is having many sleepless nights, along with many others preparing for the next election, I can tell you that it is well in hand. There is nothing that needs to be done that isn't being done. So yes, that's it. And I would just say that again, just to underline in terms of that situation, it's not having an impact on our electoral preparedness. And in my case, as you said, I'm not dodging the question. It just all simply predates me. I was not the leader of the party nor a member of any of our governing bodies during that period. But maybe just to pivot back, since we are very fortunate to have Sheila and Floyd here, I don't know if anyone has a question for them that I can direct to them about GLI. But thank you again for the question, David.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for our panelists and our MPs and Madam Paul?
Maybe Rosie, maybe I'll just indulge myself with a little teaser. I definitely, David, I try not to follow the polls. I try not to, that's a fool's errand that. So I try to stay away from that. I don't even read my own press, to be honest. But I will say that someone sent me some very encouraging numbers for the Greens that have come out over the last couple of days. There's just a tremendous amount of momentum. And we're really gratified to see the work of the last 4 months or so paying off. I mean, Elizabeth and Paul, the work that they've been doing with Jenica in the House, as you said, on issues like GLI, on the CERB, on long-term care, on the transportation, crisis that we're also facing right now. These things are really resonating with people in Canada. And then thanks to the great network of EDAs that we have all across the country, we're starting to feel the results of that, even though this is a very difficult time for people. And we all know that really they're not focused on politics the way any of us are, but they do see that we're responding to the things that matter most to them now.
Thank you, Madam Paul. This will conclude this roundtable. Ceci conclut la conférence de table ronde. Merci à tout le monde. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Floyd and Sheila.
Thank you. Sheila, Floyd, just awesome to be with you. Thank you so very much. Thanks, Annamie.